Travel is great, but planning for travel can be time-consuming and difficult. That's where One Travel comes in. With One Travel, you'll find everything you need to book the perfect trip. Flights, hotels, cars, transportation, it's all right there. With One Travel, you can book online, via app, or even pick up the phone and talk to a travel advisor ready to help you make your selections. Visit onetravel.com/music or call 855-437-2154. Plan it, book it, live it. One Travel.
It's the big sale at Half Price Books. Get almost everything for an extra 20% off this Labor Day weekend. Whether you're on the hunt for collectibles, comics, music, or movies, you're sure to find a little something new or used at your local Half Price Books. Save big with 20% off. Saturday, August 31st through Monday, September 2nd, in-store at your local Half Price Books and shop millions of titles on sale at hpb.com. Offer cannot be combined with other coupons. Exclusions apply.
Get ready, because Clear the Rack is on at your Nordstrom Rack store. Now through Monday, Labor Day, find incredible deals on Wear Now styles on sale for even less at Nordstrom Rack. Take an extra 25% off red tag clearance throughout the store from brands like Sam Edelman, Steve Madden, Joe's, and more. All sales final. The best stuff goes fast, so shop this sale at Nordstrom Rack today. Please see nordstromrack.com or ask a store associate for details.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 126 of the Go Get Outside podcast. This is your host, Jason Milligan. Welcome back, welcome aboard. I'm coming to you once again from a rooftop in Spain in the mountain town of Canillas de Aceituno. We are 3.5 weeks or so into our move. We now have a bank account. We will hopefully be moving into an apartment as you are listening to this episode. Today's episode is a good example of how you can't just wait until circumstances are perfect. You have to make things happen when you can. This was recorded a week and a half before Eric and I left the country, and right as I was developing what would turn out to be a pretty crappy summer cold. So apologies for the way my voice sounds, but I'm glad that we made this happen because you're in for a treat. Today I'm speaking with filmmaker, motion graphics artist, art director, backpacker, canyoneer, road tripper, multidiscipline outdoors guy, and all-around good dude who very graciously helped me get rid of my work desk as I was leaving the country. We are talking to Christopher R Abbey. So come with me now and let's go talk about all of those topics and more with Christopher Abbey.
Travel is great, but planning for travel can be time-consuming and difficult. That's where One Travel comes in. With One Travel, you'll find everything you need to book the perfect trip. Flights, hotels, cars, transportation, it's all right there. With One Travel, you can book online, via app, or even pick up the phone and talk to a travel advisor ready to help you make your selections. Visit onetravel.com/music or call 855-437-2154. Plan it, book it, live it. One Travel.
Ready to wake up in a new destination nearly every day with Norwegian Cruise Line? Book today to get 70% off second guest to Alaska, Europe, and beyond. Plus, everyone can enjoy their vacation with free unlimited open bar, free specialty dining, and more. Visit ncl.com, call your travel advisor, or 1-888-NCL-CRUISE. Offer ends soon. Norwegian Cruise Line. Ships registry the Bahamas and USA. Restrictions apply.
The rest of my life gon' start today.
It's the big sale at Half Price Books. Get almost everything for an extra 20% off this Labor Day weekend. Whether you're on the hunt for collectibles, comics, music, or movies, you're sure to find a little something new or used at your local Half Price Books. Save big with 20% off. Saturday, August 31st through Monday, September 2nd, in-store at your local Half Price Books and shop millions of titles on sale at hpb.com. Offer cannot be combined with other coupons. Exclusions apply.
I am Christopher Abbey, and I am an outdoor enthusiast. I would say multi-disciplined in my outdoor adventures. For my professional life, I am an art director at the Disney Company.
So I remember the way that you first became apparent to me. Well, actually, I don't completely remember, because there are two things, and I don't remember which happened first. I met you at a trailhead that I just happened to be driving by and stopped by to say hey to the Monroys.
Yep.
And you were there. But then also I was aware of some videos that you had made, and I don't remember which came first. But overall, the way you were introduced was through the canyoneering community here in Los Angeles. So how about we follow your progression to there? And we'll go way back. Where were you born? How you grew up? How you became an outdoor boy? Were you an outdoor boy as a kid? All of that stuff.
I was born and raised in Warren, Ohio, which is in northeastern Ohio, about 45 minutes south of Cleveland. I grew up in, I would call it a suburban area, was on the border of two towns, Warren, Ohio, which is more urban, I would say, and then Hallen School District, which is where I actually went to school at. And I spent my childhood, I think, pretty normal for the area, riding my bikes around. We had woods nearby. I'd go hiking there, play games with my brother, ride my bike down to the comic book store, the typical things you expect, youth to be doing. But in terms of my connection with the outdoors as a youth, we didn't really do a ton. We did occasionally go camping, car camping. We'd take the old Ford conversion van and we'd go to a place called Cook Forest, which was in western Pennsylvania. We'd set up tents and we'd do a fire, we'd do marshmallows and hot dogs, the typical thing, but we weren't going out hiking. We weren't going out rappelling for sure. Like, we might occasionally rent a tube and float down the river type of thing, but that was the majority of what we were doing as kids. But that did lead into road tripping as well, and we would go up and down the East Coast. We never came anywhere west, but we always went up and down the East Coast, typically starting in Atlantic City because my family liked to gamble, and then heading down south because they love shrimp, so they'd stop at every shrimp shack you'd see in like North Carolina, South Carolina, and then we'd head down to Florida where I had family. So road tripping became kind of my go-to getaway activity. I loved getting outdoors and just traveling to new places and seeing new things. That was, of course, once I got a car.
Now, a lot of what you're talking about so far is very similar to how I grew up in Louisiana. Yeah. The driving age was still 15. It changed to 16 right around the time I turned 16. So people had cars early on, and by the time you're halfway through high school, a lot of people have jobs, cars, responsibilities, things of their own.
Oh, yeah.
And at that point, parents are even still kind of letting us do a lot of things that maybe they wouldn't anymore at 16, 17 years old.
Or shouldn't have.
Right. Was that your situation as well, or was it later on that the car comes into play?
No, 100%. I mean, I started driving, like with my dad around when I was 14 probably. Started really driving when I was 15 and a half in Ohio, you could get your training permit or whatever it was called.
The learner's permit.
Yeah, so, and then as long as you had somebody with an actual license with you could drive wherever you wanted to. So I'd grab my oldest friend, have him come with me. My parents would let us take the 92 Chevy Cavalier out for a spin, and that was freedom to me. I mean, that was the first taste of real freedom, where I could go where I wanted to go, do what I wanted to do, hide whatever secrets I wanted to hide from my family, or mom specifically, and just have fun, and explore what it is to be free and to be your own person.
And so those road trips, did you start those in your teen years, or is those things that came along later, and what did those road trips look like?
They started basically when I turned 18. As soon as I had my own vehicle and I was out of high school and I was on my own path. That's kind of how I defined it. I always thought 18 is when you get out of the house and start your life, and that's exactly what I did. I immediately, as soon as high school was over, that summer, I went up and moved to Sandusky, Ohio, which is a place where it has a big theme park called Cedar Point. And I got a job there for the summer. I worked on a roller coaster that I don't even think it's there anymore. It was like converted, but it was a big wooden one in the back called Mean Streak. And it was like this crazy, violent, huge, awesome monster of a roller coaster. And they let 18-year-olds run it,
That's always the funny thing, is they have these devices, trained professionals, people with a lot of knowledge of physics, design, to keep people safe, to function properly. And then teenagers, half-drunken carnies, People who are completely incapable of worrying about safety and security are usually the ones operating them.
Well, that just goes to show how good the engineering was, I suppose.
Yeah, very much so.
And that thing stood for decades, like many, many decades. And then it was eventually converted into a half steel, half wood coaster, I believe.
So how long did you work at this?
Just one summer. The way it worked was you sign a contract, and you could contract for as long as you wanted out of their operating season. And then if you committed to that and you made it to the end, you get a bonus. For every hour that you worked, I forget what it was, but there's some kind of bonus. Yeah, that's what I did. And while I was there, I met a bunch of really fun people. It was my first taste of real freedom because you were dorming there with the people you were working with. So, I mean, really, your entire life circulated around those people, that place, all of that. And then you got a mixture of people who are 18 to 21, and then, of course, 21 to wherever. And so there was an on-site bar where there was a lot of underage drinking happening. So that's basically what the life looked like. It was work all day, go to this on-site bar at night, have pitchers of beer, and then go back and just do it over and over again and for the whole summer. And then at the end, everybody starts looking for what their next thing is, you know, because now your contract's over, this place is closing down. Where's everybody going? A group of people I heard through, like, you know, the grapevine, if you will, that they were going down to Orlando to work in the theme parks down there. They wanted to go to Disney World and they wanted to go to Universal.
Time to move on to the big time.
Yeah. You got your summer in, now it's time to move up.
That's right. The year-round.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Get paid the big bucks. So I was like, you know what? That sounds awesome. I was like, I don't have any plans. I wasn't ready for college. I just got out of high school. I was certainly not ready to go back to school again. Plus, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, really. My entire life, I always had a big art theme. But I never knew what I wanted to do with art. You know, I never really looked into careers or anything. At best, I thought, I'll be a comic book illustrator.
That's funny. There was a time in my life where I thought that was my life plan also.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. But then you look at the reality of it and you're like, I don't know about that. But so I went home. I told my family, I said, listen, I want to pack up my car and I want to go down to Orlando. And so that's what I did. I had a friend that I met up in Sandusky. We kind of loaded up one car pulled down there, found an apartment, and I got a job at actually both parks, both Disney World and at Universal Studios Islands of Adventure. My first job there was at the Jurassic Park section of Islands of Adventure doing acting. I'm doing air quotes now, but acting. Basically, I worked in the laboratory, another set of air quotes there, and a dinosaur would hatch, a little baby velociraptor. And there's this whole scripted routine that you'd run around the laboratory and you'd try to gather all the kids that are outside on the other side of the pane of glass, and you bring them over and you'd show them it's hatching, and it's this whole automated thing, and this little dinosaur hatch. It's still there to this day. You can go see it if you're really interested.
When you go and you see it, do you look at the acting of their most recent employees and compare them to yourself and tell your son, like, this guy's no good at this. He doesn't. When you get home, Dad will show you how you're supposed to do this.
Yeah,
properly.
I mean, of course, no one compares to the originals.
Exactly.
You know? I think we were the first ones in there because that place had just been built when I moved down there. So, you know, no one does it best like the originals. Simultaneously, to fill in more hours and continue to be able to live down there, I also got a job at Disney World, and I got a job as a character. They train you as Baloo because I'm 6'4", so they train you as all the tall characters. That's basically how it works. Like, whatever your height is what characters you can play. And so they train you as Baloo, but my main character down there was the Beast. It was definitely the coolest job I've ever had, but it was also like, how do I describe it? It was like, you don't go home feeling like you really did something with your life when you played like a fuzzy, you know, or a furry, whatever they call them. But it was basically like I would go out into this air-conditioned, I would do it was called the Villains Dinner, and you'd have Captain Hook running around, you'd have me running around, I'd go step on his cape, and we just play around. We couldn't talk. So it was all like action.
Right, it's all pantomime.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then at the end, all the kids would want to come up and sign. Well, half the kids would be scared of you, to be honest.
Right.
But the ones who were brave enough to come up to you, you'd sign autographs for them. You had to learn these signatures and stuff. And it was a cool gig, I have to say. But again, you know, for me, I'm somebody who's driven to do things with my life, and neither of those jobs were really fulfilling like that part of my.
All right, before we move on, it's not often you get to talk to somebody who played one of these characters, so we have to talk about this suit. Explain to us what that suit was like, what it was like inside of it, what the process was to put it on,
because we all see these suits and we know that there's a regular sized human inside, and we're always wondering, is that person miserable and sweating?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Right.
When I first mentioned that it was an air-conditioned villain's dinner, that's what made the job awesome.
Right.
I had a couple of occasions where I had to play Goofy, and you go into the tent where they have all the main characters like Mickey, Minnie, Goofy, Donald, and they're all signing autographs, and you have a line of kids, and it's hot and humid in Orlando. It's terrible. I would have quit that job immediately if that was the only thing I did. But being in the air condition, you're nice and cool. But basically what you do is you have to go into the underground. There is an underground tunnel system at Disney World, and you go to the wardrobe section. They give you lockers and whatnot, and you have this, it's kind of like an undergarment. It's kind of like, when you see those guys in like a one-piece red like nightgown, like with like the butt flap type of thing, Yeah, it's kind of like that. You put something like that on. It's a neutral color, like tan or whatever, but you put that on, and that's like, it's like the protection layer, so that
it's like getting ready to get in a dry suit.
Sure, yeah. Right. But the point is that they don't, everybody's wearing this costume, so they don't want everybody's like fungal matter intermingling,
okay.
And so this is like a barrier layer for health and protection.
This is required by OSHA.
Probably, I hope so. But yeah, you put that on, and then you get into the actual outfit. And the actual outfit's pretty much what you'd expect it to be. It's like a pair of pants, like that's the Beast, and a big bodysuit, with the clothes, and you got the big head that you put on.
Is it heavy?
I don't remember it being particularly heavy, no. But I was a young, virile 19-year-old, so if I put it on today, I'd probably be like, get me out of this immediately. But then I didn't care.
And visibility? Yeah. Terrible or good?
Visibility was okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember most of it being okay.
But
honestly.
like no peripheral vision, I'm assuming?
No, none of that.
Okay.
And the gloves you wore for Beast, I think they only had 4 fingers, if I remember correctly. Or maybe it was only 3. It was something weird. When you signed your autograph, you had to hold this big pencil that was like the thickness of, a big piece of kids' chalk or something. Mm-hmm. And so you hold it just like, you're like a fist.
Yeah.
And so you sign it like, I don't know, like triangular. So the B looks like a long straight line with 2 triangles off it, It was a fun job, like I said, but the best part I think that I enjoyed was the idea that you only worked on and off. You did this really simple schedule. I think, if I remember correctly, it was like 15 on and 30 off or something like that. So basically what you do is you'd go out and you do like 15 minutes of performance, meet people, sign autographs, all this stuff. You have a handler with you. And then you come back to like the break room, green room, whatever. And they have like, I remember there being like fruit trays and TV and couches. And you just like chill out and relax.
Is there any weird politics between all the character actors?
Now this is speaking from not only personal knowledge, but also some podcasts I've listened to outside of this. But I believe there's a little bit of politics between the princesses and the furries. Because the princesses, they got it pretty sweet. Like, they're a nice, they got their face exposed.
Right.
And
they can use their real hands.
Yes, they can talk. They can do all sorts of things. Whereas the furries, you're in this big, heavy, hot costume, especially with Beast, you're full of fur,
And kids want to punch you.
They do.
Instead of hug you.
And they want to mess with you. Yeah, kids mess with the furries a lot more. Although I have heard some interesting stories about how drunken, gross men mess with the princesses.
Oh, I have no doubt.
Yeah, so I'm sure that they might say differently. Who knows? But it would have been nice to be a face actor. I think it would have been a little bit nicer. But yeah, that was my time in Orlando. Eventually, I no-showed to my Disney job and took off back to Ohio to get ready for college. And a little spoiler alert, I do currently work for the Disney company. So
yeah, I was going to point out the irony of you leaving home to go to the other, the southern side of the country, end up working for Disney, which breaks you and sends you back to Ohio so that you can find a future working with Disney on the other coast.
Yeah. It's totally weird. None of this was planned. We can just put it that way. And honestly, when I did apply for the current Disney role I'm at now, I was kind of concerned that there might be some lifetime record of me that no-showed
right.
and just left Disney long ago, and no, we don't want to hire that guy. But thankfully, they either didn't do their research or it doesn't exist, one of the two.
Well, when you own 65% of all businesses in the United States, it's hard to keep up with all of them.
That's true. Yeah. You got to get some bad apples.
It also means it's not that surprising that you worked for Disney to work for Disney again later when they own so many of the businesses.
That is true. I don't know. I think some of it's just coincidence because there's not a lot of people, I think, that can say that they were a furry at Disney and then they turn into an art director in the marketing department. You know?
Probably not too many of those, I would imagine. Yeah. So you go back to Ohio because you've decided, all right, maybe college is a thing to do. And then what does life look like there?
I go back to Ohio. While I was in Orlando, I did learn about this film school called Full Sail. And I knew a couple people that were going there while they were also working at Universal. And it kind of inspired me to go, well, I do love film. Maybe film could be a career. It's artistic. It involves creativity. So it's along the same line of, when I was saying earlier, illustration and whatnot. I went back home and started researching where could I go locally that would be a good school, to learn any of these abilities. I settled on the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, which is like about a 45-minute drive east of where I lived. I did what I thought was enough research. Maybe it wasn't in hindsight, but I ended up going for video production and started in the year 2000 there. At first, I was super pumped about that school. I was living in Pittsburgh. I was in the downtown area. The earlier years prior to this were me exploring what my life could look like. This felt like it was my life, like, the beginning of my life. Slowly over time, I began to realize that what the Art Institute of Pittsburgh was really trying to teach me was not so much the film industry or how to get a job in that industry. It was more about how to be a local cameraman in Pittsburgh. And that was like the antithesis of what I really actually wanted to do. I wanted to work in Hollywood. I wanted to make films. This was my start to that. They wouldn't let us play with film cameras. We were only allowed to touch the video cameras. And the video cameras in 2000 weren't exactly appealing to the eye. At best, we were shooting something on like a mini DV or, visually, I was just like, this isn't it. Like, this is not what I want to be doing at all. So I did graduate. I got my associate. I started looking at what's next. And they had just, literally the semester that I graduated, they just introduced a new major, and it was motion graphics and visual effects. And I looked into what that was, and I was like, oh, okay. So this is like a creative process where you're taking art, whether it's illustrations or drawings or physical media, video footage, whatever, and you're mixing it with motion in whatever way you want. And it just seemed really interesting to me. And I didn't know a ton about it or what my career could look like with it. But I was like, let's just do it. Jump in. Plus, I wasn't ready to go out into the world and do anything yet in terms of a career. I was like, let's just explore this. This gives me another 2 years, buys me 2 years of student loan debt. And so I did that. I went there and got my bachelor in that. And that turned out to be the thing that really led me on my career path to today.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are so many parallels in your story and my own story. So you're about 5 years behind me, it sounds like, because you started college in 2000?
Yeah, 2000.
And that's when I got out. But similar thing, I knew about Full Sail. I knew about Cal Arts. I knew about places like that. I knew they were out of my price range. So what I did was settle on the MassCom program in Lafayette, Louisiana.
Yeah.
And it was similar. It was very clear that they were trying to prepare me to be a news anchor.
Yes.
And I did work immediately getting out of school. I worked in news, doing graphics for the news for a couple of years before I was like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
And it was really me waiting for a girlfriend to graduate, knowing I was going to eventually come out here.
Got it.
But yeah, it was the same sort of situation as like, this is what you're preparing me for. This isn't exactly what I need, but it was the cheapest, most viable option at the time.
100%. I totally get it. Well, I will say this. The Art Institute of Pittsburgh was neither viable or cheap. It was very expensive. Some loans I'm still paying on because I'm, fingers crossed, hoping maybe one loan will get forgiven at some point. Because it was recently discovered in a federal court case that the Art Institute was fraudulent in their claims of being able to provide what they offered.
All right, so where does life take you then? You go to school. You've made this similar compromise that I made, though yours sounds like it was more expensive than mine. Then you complete school, and you've got to make some other decisions.
Yeah, well, one other thing that happened I should probably bring up, because it does affect my life choices at that point, was my father passed. It was 2002 when it happened, and it really affected my schooling and the way I looked at school and what I was going to do with my future. I knew that at that point I was ready to get out of that town. Like, I had spent enough time in northeastern Ohio, and I was just like, I need to get out of here. Some negative things happened after that I was just like, I just need to start fresh somewhere else. So right in 2004, I got a job offer from a company out in Las Vegas. Their name is SciTech Studios. I don't believe they exist anymore, but they were pretty much doing like multimedia websites, like those websites where you'd click and there'd be fun animations and all this
Flash-based
100%.
websites.
Yeah, and I knew nothing about Flash, but I knew about animation. They were trying to basically bring me in as like an animator to make their websites look cooler, and they'd have their Flash guy program it all and, work through that. So I was like, yo, Las Vegas sounds cool. I've never really been to Las Vegas. I really haven't been out west ever. I was like, this sounds like a perfect opportunity. They offered me somewhere in the neighborhood of $50K or something for a starting salary. And I was like, what am I there, 24 or something? Yeah, 24.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I'm like, sounds great.
Yeah, early 2000s sounds good.
So I move out to Vegas. I get my own apartment. I start working for this company. And I worked there for 6 months, 6 to 12 months, somewhere in that range. I don't remember the exact detail there. But regardless of that, this company starts to feel again like the news anchor position. It's not fulfilling my ultimate creative goals. It was a great place to start. And if anything, it got me out of the East and brought me to the West. So that was great. It wasn't doing it creatively for me. And at a certain point, after I started meeting other animators and other designers, some from LA, some from San Francisco, some based in Las Vegas, I realized, they get paid pretty good money. That's how I started learning about the career of like motion graphics for real. And I was like, wow, they make amazing day rates and they freelance and they do this and they have all this freedom to their life. So I was like, that's where I have to do next. I have to figure that out. I did a little bit of freelancing around Las Vegas and it worked out okay. And then Al Gore started a startup television network called Current TV. And they were looking to start their design side of that and build that team out. So I applied and I went out and interviewed. They flew me out, which was super cool. This is like the first time in my life that I really started to feel like, people are valuing what I'm bringing to the table. And so I went up there and met with a guy named Micah Hahn, who was the design director at the company. Man, it was great. I'd never been to San Francisco at that time, so that was a brand new experience for me. The city was amazing. Like, it just opened up my eyes, like, were wide the whole time because of all the possibility. It's a real city. It's got public transportation. The food's amazing. There's so much entertainment and bands go there.
This is before the
Yes.
.com bubble burst,
Yes.
also, right?
Yes.
So it's just money is funneling into San Francisco.
100%. It was amazing. It was honestly amazing. And I got the job. I moved there immediately. And I lived up on Upper Haight Street. It was just a great life. I loved it there. I lived there for 1 year. And at the 1 year mark of our beginning at that design department for Current TV, we were at a review process. I said, listen, he was only paying $50,000 to live in San Francisco at that time. And to me, that was way too low. I know it was a startup, but I expected, there'd be some slight raises or bonuses or something. And the year came around, they said, we can't give any raises. There's no bonuses. And I'm like, well, then I gotta move on. That's what I did. I ended up leaving and moving back to Las Vegas at that time. It was a hard decision to make because I loved the city. I made some really good friends there. I made a lot of connections, networks inside the industry of motion graphics and stuff. But I just had to stick to my guns and what I thought was the possibility of my future. And it was time to get out on my own and start freelancing.
And what age are you around this time? This is like mid to late 20s, something like that at this point?
Yeah, I'd say I was probably around 26, 27, something like that. Because I spent about a year in Vegas, maybe a year and a half, and then a year in San Francisco. So somewhere in that range, yeah.
And at this point, you're still very much career focused.
Yeah.
It sounds like this whole outdoor aspect of your life hasn't even surfaced yet.
Road tripping was a big thing.
Right, okay.
I didn't fly back and forth. I drove back and forth to Ohio to visit friends and family. So that was a big thing. I would travel. I'd get books. What's the coolest restaurant to stop in? Omaha, Nebraska. Where's the coolest roadside attraction in Texas? I'd find those things. I'd make a road trip plan around all of that, and I'd head home and have fun along the way and come back. But yeah, outdoors hadn't happened yet for me.
So you've gone back. You were in San Francisco for a year.
Yes.
You decide to leave. You go back to Vegas.
Yes.
And now you've got to find out where that's going to take you.
Yeah. So I used my connections that I had freelanced with in Vegas when I got back to Vegas to just make some money, keep myself afloat and figure out the next steps. And I remember this pretty distinctly. I got a call from a company in LA that was looking for freelancers. The way that I tried to network myself back then was all through a website called mograph.net, which was just, what do you call them, like a chat board or whatever,
like a web form.
Yeah, exactly. It was a web form. That's right. And so that's where I would post all my work. I would just shove work on there as much as I could. I engaged as much as I could and tried to just get people to remember me. That was the whole goal. Here's my work. Remember that I made it. It finally paid off because I got a call from this company in LA who was just starting up called Roger. And they said, hey, you want to come out and freelance with us? What's your rate? And I was like, I don't even know what to say here because I feel like if I go too low, they're not going to take me seriously or they're going to take advantage of me.
Right.
And if I say too much, they're going to expect me to be this multidiscipline 3D specialist, this and that. And
the classic problem.
Yeah, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. You know, that's like always the goal. You know, underpromise and overdeliver is you know what I'm aiming for, or at least promise right on the dot.
Right. Also, don't screw yourself in the process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I did go a little low, and I learned that through that process. But regardless, it got me out to LA, which I had never wanted to. I'd never in my life had I said I can't wait to live in LA. I think that still rung true even when I moved out to LA. When I finally started working in LA. What I did for the first year of freelancing was I still lived in Las Vegas and I commuted to LA. So I would wake up on Monday morning and I would commute 3 hours, 45 minutes or something like that. And I would hop on Craigslist and I would find a couch to sleep on, a room for rent, whatever. And I would stay throughout the week. And then Friday night when we punched our clock and got out of the office, I headed straight back to Vegas. So basically it was like weekends.
How long did you do this?
At least a year.
That sounds miserable. So people who don't live in either of these cities may not be aware of this. The worst possible time to be driving between those cities is the time you were doing it every single week.
That's true. That is true.
It's also a drive that's pretty interesting a number of times, but by your 15th time, you don't want to see it ever again.
I would literally just throw on my music and I would just jam out and just float to the city.
Yeah, there's no way now in life you can make yourself do this again.
And plus, I don't think I don't remember traffic being as bad as it is today.
Right. Well,
I don't remember the drive. You would think a Friday night drive leaving here at say 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. to Vegas would be horrible right now.
Right.
Like,
It could be 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah, I would never do it. But I remember making it in like 3:45. Now, of course, I was speeding and doing this whole like weaving through traffic type of thing. But I'm probably that asshole that I yell at now when I'm driving with my son in the car. I'm like, slow down.
And if I'm doing the math right, where we are located in time at this point of your story is somewhere like 2007, 2000.
I would say 2009-ish.
2009.
Yeah, we're getting closer to 2009. I'd probably say 2008, 2009. I love that life because to me it was just like ultimate freedom again. It was just like I'm making my decisions. I'm doing what I want to do, and I'm finally doing work that I'm proud of. Current TV work, I was very proud of that too, because that was a startup for a network and we got to create the look, which was really, really interesting and really fun. But with Roger, I was working on big, huge client projects. You know, I remember working on DirecTV projects and, you know, big broadcast channels and film titles and this and that. And I just loved it. And I got to meet all these other crazy talented people that I could learn from and talk with, go get a beer after work and just shoot the shit about design and animation and whatnot. It was great. I really enjoyed that. And honestly, built into the freelancing lifestyle, which I didn't know at the time, but I grew to learn this, is the networking, is the going out, is the going to have dinner over here, going to have drinks over there, meeting the producers, every post-producer that you could meet, get a drink with them and be friends with them. And that's how I made all my friends, was they were all in the industry. So I did that for a year or two. I don't remember exactly, but it was about a year or two. And then I finally said, you know what, screw it. This is ridiculous, me driving back and forth every week.
Yeah, it took you that long to realize.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
You should have realized in 1 month.
Yeah. That's probably true. But then I was like, all right, screw it. I hit up my friend who had just moved out from Ohio, another friend who moved out from Ohio, and he had a couch. And I was like, yo, can I sleep on your couch for a little bit until I figure out where I'm going to live there? And he said, sure. So I slept on their couch for, I don't know, a number of weeks. I had my eyes set for some reason. I can't tell you today why, but I had my eyes set on a loft in downtown. That's all I could picture myself living in.
Because you'd seen something like that on TV
Has
at
to
some
have been.
point.
I mean, that's just like, it must be like the Northeastern Ohio, like dream location or something.
Every TV series from when the times we would have been children, if you were in a big city and you were an artsy person, you lived in a high-rise loft that was somehow enormous but affordable on an artist's pay.
Yeah, that's true. And the good thing is this kind of art actually pays good. So you can afford it, you know.
It's because it's commercial art.
Yeah. And at that time, the downtown area was literally, I don't want to say it was just coming up because it had been coming up over plenty of time because there was an arts district that was turning around and gentrifying, sure, but, you know, changing. It was changing. And they were building these lofts down there, and they were trying to get people in them, so they were offering reasonable rents. I got into one. I loved it. Even with all the downsides that came along with it. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this know about the homeless population in Skid Row, downtown LA, but I never let that define or make my decision for me, you know? I just looked at that as another characteristic of the city. But yeah, the cool thing was I lived in downtown, And Roger's office, who I freelanced with probably 75% of my time back then, was in the Arts District. So I could walk, I could ride a bike. It was great. It was just such a cool lifestyle. And all of our places we'd hang out were down there. We could just walk from the office, go to get a beer and a dinner, and then go back to the loft and have an after party, whatever. It was just, that's what life looked like for me for a long time. And it was
like that point of your life, that's sort of the ideal place for you to be.
It was.
Yeah.
And then, once, just like any other place, they start looking out for new talent and they're finding new people, and I'm trying to find new studios to work with. And I ended up starting to work with different studios in different locations. So I started working out in Culver City, Santa Monica. That drive sucks, and I hated that drive. At the time, I did own a motorcycle, so I was able to do the lane splitting thing, which made the commute a lot easier, albeit a lot more dangerous.
I mean, and it's still a better commute than you were doing from Vegas for
That's
a year.
100% true. 100% true. I started getting some weird asks. I got a call from a company out in Paris called Naked Company, and they were like, would you ever consider coming to work in Paris? And I was like, yeah, tomorrow, let's go. And so they said, all right, cool. And they brought me out for, I think the first time I was out there was it was a long time, probably past legal status, but it was like 5-6 months. It was intimidating, obviously the language barriers and whatnot, but getting to go to another city on their dime, they put you up in an apartment, they're paying for all that, they're paying you a paycheck. It was great. I couldn't have asked for a better way to go explore another, country or another city. I mean, they brought me back 3 years in a row. Those are some of the kind of perks that I got choosing this industry, choosing this career, which again, all came from a totally random decision to go to this college and then not liking the degree I chose. And they happened to just come out with a brand new degree that I didn't even know existed.
And in all honesty, probably didn't really exist before that.
Yeah.
A lot of people like to, though it's not 100% true because Saul Bass was doing things in the 60s, but a lot of people credit the movie Seven, the opening credits, as the beginning of motion graphics as a recognized art form. And
it's ironic that you brought that up, because tomorrow at work we're doing a creative share where we're actually presenting, me and the other 2 art directors I work with, presenting a number of title sequences for films that really influence the motion graphics and are today very just badass, really. Something to inspire and, the rest of the team. It's going to all start with the Seven thing, because that was really the turning point.
And I believe that was 94 and 95.
Yeah.
So the idea that 5 years later they'd start this program, that totally tracks.
Yep, makes sense. Anyway, the Paris thing was a little bit of a sidetrack, but it just does give you a little bit of history in that. I did travel a bit. I got an opportunity to get out of the country and see other things through this. My entire life wasn't just spent in SoCal, doing all of this. But, we probably should speak a little bit to outdoor adventures.
Yeah, I'm curious how these start to slip into your life, because you're one of those that also doesn't just do these outdoor adventures. You like to document them.
Yeah.
And you like to create video projects.
Yeah.
And clearly at some point you get introduced into all these activities, but you also fall in love with them and you want to share them in some sort of artistic fashion.
So I got heavily involved in CrossFit when I lived in downtown LA. There was this shitbox gym called Mean Streets, run by this maniac named Ronnie. But these guys were serious business. So it was just fun being around them. It was fun watching them do their thing and be so passionate about something. But regardless of that, for me, it was just fitness, and it was just a really fun way to get fit. But I met a guy there who backpacked. I think it was right around 2010-ish. Maybe it was 2009. He invited me and said, hey, would you be interested in going on a backpacking trip? Or maybe I overheard him. Maybe I just pushed my way onto the trip. I don't remember exactly. But
maybe if I was talking to him right now, he would talk about how you were eavesdropping and slid yourself into his
Steve,
trip.
don't get in the comments. Good dude, but I don't think he knew what he was getting into with me, to be completely honest. He just knew that I was fit because he's seen me work out, so he knew that I had the cardio and this and that. But the trip that he had planned was freaking intense for your first backpacking trip ever, I have to say. And I had no backpacking experience, no backpacking gear whatsoever. I was starting at zero, and I had about 2 weeks to learn everything I needed to learn about backpacking. And he, even though he's a great guy, wasn't really helping me with that process. It was kind of up to me to figure it out. So I reached out to all my friends and said, hey, do you guys know anything about backpacking? And there was this guy named Ted Gore, who was also a fantastic animator in the area. And he's like, yeah, I do backpacking trips. I think he was even into photography at the time. And he goes, do you want to borrow some of my gear? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. I had another friend named Brock who sold me his backpack at the time, which is far oversized for what you'd ever need. It was like an 80-liter pack.
Right.
But he was a big, tall guy, so it fit me well, and he sold it to me for $50. So I was like, all right, cool, let's go. Let's do that. I just gathered all this random-ass gear together. I went to REI and grabbed a bunch of stuff, just things I thought I'd need, you know? And I remember sitting down in the hotel room the day before our trip, laying everything out, because I wanted to take a picture of it. And, of course, I was already filming this first trip. I brought a camera to film the whole thing.
Because why not just add even more weight to this pack?
I had, like,
it's already probably crazy heavy.
I think I had the Canon 7D at the time or something like that. And I was like, all right, let's bring the camera. Let's film this thing. Let's do the whole nine.
DSLR.
Yes, DSLR.
Revolution.
1920 1080, I believe. But yeah, so I laid it on the bed and I just let him go through it and start picking things out that he was like, no, you don't need this. You don't need 3 pairs of underwear. You don't need 3 shirts. You know what I mean? Like I was bringing extra clothes and all this stuff.
How many days was this trip going to be?
It was a 5-day, 4-night trip.
Okay, yeah, so it was a pretty good introduction.
And it was up in the Sierra. It was, I've talked about this with other people and no one really knows this for some reason, this area, but it's called North Palisade.
Okay, yeah.
You go up over Bishop Pass by South Lake and it's just it was a long, I want to say it was like 30 miles, and that you might go, 30 miles over 5 days, no big deal, whatever.
It was probably like 10,000 feet of
change. It was
something.
so much, because so many passes we were going over, and he was taking us, the whole goal for this trip was to take him out to this lake. He had done this trip once before with another mentor of his, and he wanted to do it the way that it was intended, which was to go over this final pass and then make it a loop. But we went all the way out there. We made it out there. It was an amazing goddamn trip. It was just amazing. The first night, there was this huge thunderstorm. We had to hide from the lightning, and it was so exciting. Like, it was just adventure packed, and I loved every minute of it until we got to the final pass that he wanted to do, which is what they couldn't achieve last time. And all I remember about it today is that it was a very steep scree hill. To me, it seemed like it was forever tall. It was another pass, essentially. And the whole thing was this scree hill. It was like, for those who know Monkey Face, it was like that times 1,000 or something to me in my memory. And I had, again, this 80-liter pack on that probably weighed 60 pounds. And I just, my balance was all off. And we got about halfway up it. And I was like, dude, it's getting dark. And I just don't feel comfortable going any farther. Steve was such a good dude. He was like, totally get it. Let's go back down. We'll camp. And we'll just head out the other way starting in the morning. That was my first trip. It was without any injury. It was without any major mistakes. If anything, it actually had level-headed thinking in it to turn around when we couldn't achieve the original goal. That really set the tone of all of my trips to come, whether it be backpacking, canyoneering, pack rafting, whatever else. I really believe that safety is number one. That was a great first example of it. And being humble and not being too goal-oriented in terms of putting the goal ahead of safety.
I think something that helps, too, is when you're out somewhere like the Sierra Nevada, which feels like sincere, true wilderness.
Yeah.
You've driven away from civilization to get there, and then you've hiked even further away from civilization. It makes it apparent to you very quickly that you have to rely on you and the people that are with you, and you better make good decisions because help is not going to be nearby.
I think it helped because me and him were not friends. Like, I make that very clear. Like, we were not like friends outside of the gym. We were gym buddies. We'd compete in the gym. We'd have fun together in the gym. But outside of the gym, we didn't have like a social life. So we didn't really know each other. We got to know each other on this trip, of course. I think it was just dumb luck that I got lucky enough on my first trip that I got with a partner who heard me, listened to how I felt, and followed through with, that. Because I could have just as easily been with somebody who just wanted to push no matter what the cost,
Right.
And I could have been stuck in this super precarious position, being on the top of a pass in the middle of the night, first backpacking trip, not knowing what to do, or even worse, could have fallen down and had an injury, and then a SAR rescue, who knows?
Yeah, I'd like to think also not knowing this person, but the type of person that would take a new person on a 5-day trip through the Sierras with that kind of terrain, that person understands what they're bringing those people into.
Yeah.
And what sort of decisions would need to be made.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that he was prepared for those sorts of decisions to be made.
He must have been.
Yeah.
He must have been. I certainly would be today if I was going to take somebody new on a trip like that. But yeah, so that was my first foray into it all. Prior to that, it was car camping. That was it. But this was really exciting and really made me start going, okay, what's next? What can I do next? So my next trip was a trip with Steve again. And we went and did the Trans-Catalina Trail, which again was super exciting. Far less dangerous, by the way. I should have started there.
That would have been a great beginner one because when I did the Trans-Catalina Trail, we realized you could actually do this trail without bringing any food.
100%.
And you can manage to feed yourself each day if you had to.
Yep. In two harbors, you can get that general store to deliver food to you out if you at the far campground on the beach. They'll bring food to you.
Right, and then you can go to the airport and buy bison burgers.
We had bison burgers. It was awesome, yeah.
What I like to point out about the Trans-Catalina Trail, it is the only backpacking trip I've ever done where every single day on the trip we encountered a playground. So every day we got to swing on swings and slide down slides, and I've never had that experience on any other backpacking trip.
The strongest memory I have of that trip, it is endlessly elevation, but no actual elevation gain overall. It's just up and down and up and down and up and down on dry, treeless hills with the sun beating down on you. I don't know that I'd ever be tempted to do it again.
And for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, they do know what we're talking about because they've seen pictures of Catalina Island on Mac screensavers and Mac desktops. It is that big, beautiful island that you saw on the Trans-Catalina Trail. Basically, I guess it kind of circumnavigates. I mean, I guess it cuts through the center as well. It's just a trail that takes you around most of the island.
It takes you up to the center campground. I forget what it's called there. And then it takes you to the beach campground on the west side of the island, which is super cool. And then back down like Two Harbors area. And we didn't do the northern section. I don't know if you did, but...
No, we didn't have enough time. Yeah. You're talking about the little side spur that goes out to like Starlight or something like that. Yeah.
We ended ours in Two Harbors and then took the boat, ship, whatever, back to Avalon.
Same. Yeah. That would have been a really good introductory one. So after your actual introductory one, doing that one, it must have felt like...
It felt all right. Yeah, it felt fine.
You felt like you were an expert.
Yeah. And it was also cool because it was such a different environment. You know, now I've been exposed to two crazy different environments that I wouldn't even consider to be anything alike other than the fact that we're both walking on our feet with backpacks on. The rest of it was completely different. How we got water, you know, everything was different. So
one interesting about the Trans-Catalina Trail is you're paying for them to leave water for you.
Well, we didn't even do that.
Oh, so
we
how
just
did you
carried all of our water until you get to that center campground. Now, I don't know if this is always this way, but the water was running at that campground. So we were able to, they actually have a shower there. I was like, it's literally just a shower head outdoors, just going onto the dirt, but the shower feels good after an all-day dusty, you know, hot summer hike.
Oh yeah, and you did it in I did it in November. I did it near Thanksgiving,
it was hot,
which was perfect conditions.
Yeah.
We even got rain.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So very different experience than I think you had.
Totally.
All right, so you're living downtown. You're doing CrossFit. You've gone out to do this backpacking trip in the Sierras where you turn back because you're maybe a little in over your head, but it's a great trip nonetheless.
Yep.
You go do Trans-Catalina Trail, which got to boost your confidence way up.
Oh, yeah.
And now what's life look like?
Now I was excited to start sharing with others. I did a bunch of trips in between there too that I'm not going to get into all those details. But the next most memorable trip I had after that was I invited my brother and his 3 friends out to do the Grand Canyon of the Tuolumne in Yosemite. And man, that's like probably the most memorable trip of my life, honestly. But these guys come out, they have no idea what they're getting themselves into. I'm the only one with real backpacking experience.
So you're their Steve.
I am their Steve, yes. I am their Steve. They come out, you know, some of them had been training a little bit. They're all from the East Coast. Some of them have been training a little bit. Some of them haven't trained in quite a while, you know. But I tell them the things they need to get. I'm lending them some of my gear, just like friends did for me. I'm taking them out to REI to pick up the things they might have missed that I know they'll need. And I'm helping them sort out their packs to make them reasonable weight, you know. And they were smart. They decided to share tents and things like that to lighten their loads. And yeah, so we all load up in my truck, drive up to Yosemite, start off at White Wolf Lodge, take the shuttle up there, and boom, we're in the middle of the wilderness. It was like one of the most iconic, classic, visual backpacking trips that I can imagine. You know, when I would watch like The Great Outdoors as a kid, you know, with John Candy, this is the kind of environment, and I know that wasn't filmed in Yosemite, but that's kind of what I imagine. These big, awesome trees and these raging rivers and this, you know, untouched landscape.
Right, and everything feels enormous and large, and it makes you feel like a tiny little human.
Yep. The closest thing to humanity that you experience out there is like the occasional bridge over the river or something along those lines, you know. It was an amazing trip. 5 days, 4 nights. We did White Wolf down into the Pate Valley, ran into a shit ton of rattlesnakes and scared the hell out of all of us because none of us...
Like a nest of rattlesnakes or something? Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was funny because there's actually there's a sign down there that somebody had carved into a piece of tree bark. and it literally said snakes. They carved it with their knife, and it said snakes as like a warning. And as soon as you pass that area, you would just hear rattles, like, everywhere you're going. And the whole time we're just freaking out. And I remember very specifically, one of us was at the lead. We basically Rochambeau'd to see who'd be like the first one at the front, because no one wanted to be up front with the snakes. And anyway, I remember the first person, there's like a den, no joke, like a big rock with a bunch of snakes underneath it. He came up and they all started going off. He literally jumped back and knocked the two people behind him back and fell onto the ground, and everybody's freaking out. It was terrifying. The snakes were terrifying because, we weren't very knowledgeable about rattlesnakes at the time, what kind of rattlesnakes they have there, how dangerous they are, if we got bit, etc. When we went and got our permit, the ranger told us that last week somebody was just bit by a rattlesnake and they had to hike their own ass out of the valley. So I was like, that sounds terrible, but he lives. That was at least a good sign. It was freaky.
Man, you're on a classic hero's journey. So you've got the people leaving home to go on their journey, into the unknown. You encounter your harbinger, which is this sign of snakes.
Yes.
And then you encounter your first real obstacle, which is this super dangerous den of snakes that you have to overcome. Did the rest of the journey continue, and everyone learned valuable lessons and then returned home to share their valuable lessons?
I think so. I think a lot of them learned that before they go on another backpacking trip with me, that they're going to work out a little bit more. I think I even learned that, to be completely honest, and I was in good-ass shape back then. But I was carrying all this camera gear because I made a film out of it, so of course.
Yeah, and what is that film?
Insert John Muir quote here.
Oh, yeah, I've come across that one.
Yeah, it's a little joke because everybody who talks about Yosemite uses some John Muir quote, and I was just so sick of reading them that it was just a little sarcastic, tongue-in-cheek to that. But yeah, it was great, man. We saw amazing views. We got to sleep on a rock and look at the moon with no one around you at all, and all you hear is the waterfalls raging. We saw a bear in the middle of a rainstorm. We had to kick a snake out of the way on this little ledge crossing by a river. We did themed dinner nights because you know how you can get these dry packed meals, so we all chose ones like we got the Mexican ones and we got the Italian ones, and we all got different ones. So then on the night we'd have Italian night and we'd have pasta and lasagna and this and that. It was awesome. It was so cool. It was a great trip, man. It was a great trip. And I guarantee you asked any of those guys today what they thought of it, I guarantee it's in their memory banks for the rest of their lives.
And when you set up this trip, how long was this after you went on your first trip? How much experience have you gotten before you start taking other people out?
I would say 8 years.
8 years?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So a lot of time. So we went through a lot of time. Mm-hmm. So at this point, you're not downtown anymore.
No, I'm living here. We're in Pasadena now.
Okay, right. So a whole lot of life has happened in this time. By the time you go from... By the time you go from that first Sierra trip to let me take people out on this trip on my own.
The biggest life changes that happened during then is I met my current fiance, and we moved into a house in Pasadena. We were living together in the loft downtown, and things just weren't right. It just wasn't working because it's a loft. It's one big open room, and I'm sometimes freelancing from there trying to work, and she's got things to do, and there was no privacy. We decided, let's go try to find another place to live, and somehow we landed on Pasadena. This house that we found, I don't think I could imagine myself living anywhere else because of the amount of privacy that this affords me. I feel like I'm in nature to some degree, But it aligned with my outdoor self, even though she doesn't. She'll do car camping. We own an Airstream. She'll do Airstream camping. She will not go backpacking. That's not on her agenda. She will not be rappelling and canyoneering. No. After we moved out here into Pasadena and life kind of settled a little bit more for us, I started doing more backpacking trips. I would go out backpacking whenever I could. I'd do road trips out to Utah. I started learning about Utah, Arizona, Grand Canyon, all of these things. And of course, there's a lot of road trips happening at the same time, back and forth to Ohio because my fiance Haley is also from a similar area to where I'm from. She's from Newton Falls, so it's like a 25-minute drive away. So we drive home all the time, to visit family and come back. And we do the same thing that I did, which is let's find cool, interesting things to stop and check out on the way, back and forth. But yeah, when I started exploring Utah, it was life-changing to me. One thing that bummed me out is that I was never into the outdoors when I lived in Vegas. I mean, the whole time I was in Vegas, I wasn't exploring anything.
You didn't realize you had Red Rock right there next to you.
No, I didn't. I mean, I drove around the loop one time. Right. In fact, that's where I met Haley at because she came out with her family and they met me there. I met them there. But I never really thought of it as this place I could go hiking and rappelling and canyoneering and all this other stuff. It just wasn't a thing.
Well, there's this mental hurdle you have to get past where you look out at these huge expanses and you're like, wow, that's pretty and intimidating and whatever. But there's this little mental hurdle you have to jump over where you realize, wait, I can explore that.
Yeah.
I'm capable
Totally.
of exploring that. And until you go over that hurdle, it sometimes doesn't even dawn on you that that's an option.
And I'm very much, like I mentioned earlier, I'm very much in the safety realm. Safety plays a very important role in everything I choose to do, especially now that I have a 4-year-old. But even previous to that, because my hands are my livelihood. You know, if I break my hands, I can't animate, I can't make money. So to me, all of that was very important. So, and I'm also a person who doesn't like to jump into things without doing a lot of research about them. When canyoneering finally came around, how I learned about it was I was doing road trips and backpacking trips out in Utah, and I had seen some people rappelling. And I was like, what the fuck is that? What is rappelling? Like, what are they doing? Like, what are they rappelling? So it took me a little bit of time of seeing it a few times. I went back to Southern California and did some research and realized, oh, there's this thing called canyoneering. And then I started going, well, can I learn canyoneering in Southern California? Like, it didn't click. I didn't think that the things I saw them doing on Red Rocks and Arches over there would be occurring here in Los Angeles. Like, it just didn't seem feasible. But then I learned about Uber Adventures, which I know a lot of people learned through them. And I signed up immediately, and I signed up on a one-on-one course with Todd because I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this right, and I want all the attention because I want to make sure that what I'm doing, he's seeing, and I'm doing it properly, and I'm able to pay attention to him and all of this. And we did a full weekend course, and man, it was like the best decision of my life. Essentially, what was happening was I was starting to seek out more adventure. I wanted something more. The backpacking trips weren't getting boring, but they were getting a little bit commonplace, maybe.
Yeah.
It was running its course, and I still go backpacking today, but now I have this extra skill set that I can bring to the table, and that's the canyoneering, that's the rappelling, that's the rope work, that's all of that. Canyoneering changed the whole way I look at the outdoor world, because previously I'm going, well, where's the trails? What are the trails I can go hike? What are the trails I can go backpacking on? Now I'm looking, where's the canyon where no one goes that I can go do, you know? And of course it didn't start out with that. I started on Bailey, you know? One of the finest canyons in Southern California.
Hey, man, when that thing has water running through it like it did last year during the big rains, it's pretty great.
All right.
For just what is thought of as like a dinky little beginner canyon.
Well, how's the poison
LA?
oak in it during that time period?
I don't recall it being that bad.
Okay.
Maybe it washed away. I don't know.
Yeah, I've never in my entire life had poison oak until I started canyoneering, and I got it on that first canyon from Bailey, and I don't understand. Poison oak is like my arch nemesis. I can just look at it.
It likes to grow in dark, wet places.
Yeah,
so if you're going to get into canyoneering, you're going to encounter it.
You see that bush on that hill that's turning orange? That is a poison oak plant.
Oh, right by your house.
Mm-hmm.
Lucky you.
Yeah, so I just spent as much time in the canyons right after I learned, which I started canyoneering in 2021. January 1st, I think, was my course, literally. So I've been doing it for about 3.5 years now. But yeah, it just changed my whole perspective. It gave me new skills to learn. It gave me a path in the outdoors to just expand my knowledge, expand my skill set, expand the possibilities. Because what all that led to for me was the ability to go on multi-discipline trips or multi-dimensional trips, you know. I can go on a trip where I'm going on a backpacking trip, so I have my tent, I have my food, but I'm also maybe going to pack raft down a river, and I'm also going to go rappel in this canyon. That to me is ultimate. It's amazing. That's kind of the stuff that excites me right now, is just being able to get out there and do that kind of stuff and mix as much of it together as I can. Of course, I like to film it. Like I said, I started filming that backpacking trip with my brother and our friends. That was kind of the first. I think it was one of the first ones. I also did Havasupai. I went down to Havasupai previous to that, and these beautiful places that a lot of people don't get to go to, I wanted to share with others. Specifically, I wanted to share it with friends and family. But I thought, okay, I have this skill set of being able to make, beautiful images. I know how to do motion graphics. I can basically do the full package by myself, even though it's sometimes soul crushing. I'm sure you understand that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to share these things with the world. I'm going to try to get as many eyeballs on them as I can. It hasn't been as successful from, like a social standing, type of thing, or like eyeballs on my films type of world. But from like a personal achievement level, it's been giving me nothing but confidence. I love it. It's just, I can't say enough good things about the process.
Yeah, one of the things that I find valuable outside of just documenting it for someone else to see it is it leaves a record for you, and you can go back later.
100%.
And by that time, you've forgotten what it was like to make that video, and maybe even what you did in it, and you can look back at it, and you can relive these parts of your life that are worth remembering and reliving.
I think you've talked about it before, but that idea that, you could be in the most miserable position of your life, and in that moment, you're like, I'm never doing this ever again. But when you come home, you let some time pass, a year later, you look at those photos or you watch the video you made, all you remember is the positives of it. Like, that was such an exciting thing. You don't remember how bad your feet hurt or how heavy your pack was, or...
Well, sometimes you do, but it feels like it was all worth it.
Yeah, that's true.
And then sometimes those rough parts are even the parts that you most value remember afterwards.
Character building.
Yeah, and then just confidence building and various other things.
Yeah.
So, let's talk a bit more about how you decided to merge these two different things, which is, your filmmaking aspect of your career-oriented part and this outdoor aspect. Because at some point, like I know you said early on, you brought a camera out to document things, but at some point you start not only just documenting things, but you start creating these works intentionally. Not, I'm going out on a backpacking trip, let me bring the camera. It's, I want to make this short sort of film with an outdoor edge. Like I remember one of them specifically is a camping Friday the 13th sort of parody. And so clearly that isn't something that happened to you that you documented. It's something that you wanted to create and then went out to create. So let's talk about how that part of the process came about.
I think all that starts with a transition in my career. Basically, I was freelancing out in Santa Monica one day, and I got this call on lunch. There was this guy named Lucas Aragon, and he was like, hey, I work at ABC. We're owned by Disney. Would you ever be interested in taking a full-time job working as an animator, designer for ABC? And I'm like, hell no. That's what my brain was saying. But I'm the person who's like, I explore every opportunity. I want to see what there is to offer, etc. So I told him, I'll meet with you. I'll come in for an interview. And so I did. And I went in for an interview, and I told him, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, I love my freelance life. I love the ability to work with different companies and work on different creative across all brands and everything. But he was like, well, how about this? Let's start you as a freelancer. See if you like it. If you like it, then we can, transition you into a full-time employee. And that's exactly what happened. I fell in love with it. I loved having stability in my life. A big part of freelancing is networking and looking for new work. It's a big part of it. And you don't get paid for that part. When you move into this full-time career, you don't have to do that anymore, which frees up a lot of time. So now you got some extra time to do extra things with. So after a while of working at ABC and getting into the rhythm and learning all about it, then I started looking for more to expand my own creative, because now I found myself, okay, ABC's maybe not fulfilling that creative juice that I need filled. It's just not hitting that. So I have to go do it myself now on my own projects. And so I started around 2015-ish going, I'm going to seriously figure this out. So I started figuring out what kind of gear I need to make this happen. I went out and intentionally bought a bunch of gear specifically with the mindset of I'm going to be carrying it and I'm going to be filming outdoors, which led me to, a bunch of DSLR type cameras like the Sonys and stuff like that. I brought a gimbal on a lot of my trips, unnecessary weight that I wouldn't bring today.
Well, now you wouldn't need, because the cameras don't even need gimbals.
And my aesthetic has changed over the years too. Back then I wanted super smooth, 120 frames a second footage. Now I'm looking for handheld vibes that are just very documentary style. So my style has evolved and found its own kind of like a sweet spot, if you will. But yeah, I started filming with Steve. And by the way, that wasn't just let's go film some clips. My brain said you're going to make a film out of this. My reality is I had no idea how to do that back then in 2010.
And you probably didn't realize how occupied you would be with other things when you were on the trail.
100% true. 100% true. But I still do have all those clips to look back on, like you said. So still memories. Maybe someday I'll find a way to use it. Who knows? I have a commercial director friend who always asks me, why do you keep all of these camera originals on your drives? Because I have probably 100 terabytes. The only thing I can tell him is that I'm gonna find a way to use this in the future. Like, this is memories to me. This isn't just a commercial shoot of like for Aquaphor or Budweiser or whatever else, Chevy. This is like my life. So I think I'll find a way to use it in the future.
I have everything.
Yeah.
From the crappiest, grainiest.
Yep, me too.
GoPro footage to I keep it all.
It's important. It's part of my life. Someday when I die, somebody can just throw that hard drive away and call it, or bury me with it. I don't know. Play it all at my funeral, whatever. Right. But yeah, so I started making these intentional films. I started going, I'm going to film these adventures. People don't get to see it, especially with canyoneering. That's what really got me excited, was the canyoneering side of it. because backpacking, people generally understand that. They have a general idea of it. They've seen it in film or TV. They might see it in like some hiker was rescued or blah, blah, blah. They know about it. Canyoneering, no one really knows about that, in my opinion, unless you're in the outdoor community. It was exciting to be able to share these images with my friends and family who'd never seen it. And then it was also exciting to be able to share back these films with the people that were there, the people who were involved. And, now they have a little memory of their own. They can look back on it and share it. And I've gotten a lot of compliments from that side of it, which is like, I showed this to my mom, and she's never seen what I do out there, and she loves it. Thank you for showing this. Nowadays, of course, there's cell phones everywhere, so you can record stuff. But, you set the tone with music and pacing and all of this. You create a scene, a mood, an atmosphere, and I think it's more than just like a clip on a cell phone.
For sure. If it wasn't more, then there wouldn't have been a film industry for many decades.
100%.
Yeah, because we get something far more than just the visuals out
there. I didn't really know where I wanted to take these films when I first started. When I first started, they were just basically beautiful images in a expected timeline, start to finish essentially of the day, over beautiful music. And that was it. Like that was where I started. It was just that, it was a simple aesthetic. Then I started doing voiceovers to kind of tell a tale about what had happened. And then I eventually evolved into interviewing people and getting their experiences while they were on the trails or in the canyons and how they thought and felt about it. Now today, I'm looking at it from a whole different angle. I mean, like you mentioned, the Jason Voorhees, like parody, spoof film, whatever you want to call it. The Jason Voorhees spoof film all started from this idea of like, first of all, I'm a big horror fan, so that's really where it started from. But I was like literally asking myself the question, would Jason Voorhees go on vacation? And if he did, what would his vacation be? And that's what it started with. So I got a couple friends together who also like horror, and I was like, let's talk about like, what is this? And that's where we came up with the idea, and it was Jason Voorhees taking a vacation to go to Yosemite, staycation. I think it turned out cool. I've gotten mixed reception with it. Some people say it's kind of boring because there's this middle section that I made very scenic and slow and intentionally moody, but it breaks the scripted part of the film in half. So I don't know, but what did you think of it?
It's been a bit since I watched it, so it's the first of any of your videos that I ever watched.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
So somehow I came across that one.
That's a weird one. Okay.
Yeah, somehow I came across that one and watched that one. But it's been a few years now. I remember liking it, and I remember watching other stuff afterwards.
That's
because
cool.
I thought it was really well done.
Well, that's good.
So
sign.
I don't remember having this reaction.
I've made a few films now. I got some under my belt. I've really started to hone my craft. I started learning the tools I like to use and how I like to use them. I most importantly learned how I mount them to myself so that they don't end up in the waterfall, because I've lost a number of lenses, filters, cameras themselves, batteries to the waterfalls, to the rivers, to the rocks, whatever. So yeah, after I put out enough films where I felt super comfortable and I was learning my craft and I was understanding what makes a good short film. Actually, I should mention this. I started doing a documentary course. I went online. I found this documentary course by Mark Bone. It was like, hey, do you like documentary? Do you want to make documentaries? We're starting an online course where we're going to do, video tutorials and all this stuff, which typically I stray away from because I'm like, it's kind of trash. Like, I'd rather just get in the world and do it. Mm-hmm. But there was a segment to this documentary thing that I didn't quite understand, and I thought they could help me elevate. So I signed up, and I started doing these documentary courses, which I think that elevated all of my skills considerably, to be completely honest. It's called The Art of Documentary, so if you're into it, go check it out. But
yeah, that's great, because a lot of times, it's okay, I learned 85% of the things I already knew, and then picked up a couple little things.
No, the cool thing about this course was it was very detailed. They bring in industry experts that lend their talents and skill sets, so that you're not just learning from this guy who's he's a filmmaker, but he doesn't know every aspect of filmmaking. Right. So they're bringing in industry professionals for how to lav somebody properly, how to do sound on location, how to do a really beautiful interview lighting setup in 3 different.
So it gets really technical,
super technical,
because so often with those courses, it's very broad and vague, and you'll somehow figure out. A lot of times it's that technical aspect.
You walk away from every one of these videos with a real world set of skills that you can take and use on your next shoot. So that's what I loved about it. Plus, you have lifetime access to all the coursework, so everything they come out with in the future, if it's regarding in those courses, because they do new courses, of course, but yeah, you have access to it all the time. You can always go back and relive it, re-watch it, relearn it, And the biggest thing is there's a Facebook group that's associated with it, and you start making a network in there. So I'm back to networking again, just like in my freelance days, meeting other filmmakers in the area and wherever. and meeting up, talking about our projects, etc.
And what platform is this through, or is it?
That was
its
just
own
through
platform?
Facebook. Everybody's doing it through Facebook. It's crazy.
But this class, is it through one of the learning platforms, or it's own thing?
It is through one of those platforms. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head.
Skillshare or Udemy or
No, it's not one of those.
Not any of those.
No, it's like one of those. You can like skin it so it's modular.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know what it is though.
Okay.
That out of all of the industry that I know, the one side of the industry that I know nothing about is like web design. Like I've never learned anything with web design. I feel like I'm terrible at it, and I certainly don't want to speak on it right now.
All right. We'll hunt down what class it is, and
exactly.
then it'll be in the show notes.
But yeah, just look up the art of documentary. It's awesome. But that gave me a set of skills that took me from shooting outdoor nature films, whatever you want to call them, and turning that skill set into now I can make professional films. I can go get clients now and actually use this skill to potentially make money, which has happened through a number of networking opportunities in that coursework. You know, some director will be shooting a film and they'll be like, hey, can you come? Do you want to be a cinematographer on this project? Yes. And then start learning about rates and all that stuff with this new industry because I hadn't previously done this, you know what I mean? But I did have all the experience from when I freelanced, so I understood the craft and I understood the structure, but I didn't understand what is a current pay rate for this and, you know, all that stuff. So I started working with different people, and I talked to a buddy that we canyoneer with named Brandon Gonzalez. He's an awesome dude. He's also in the film industry. He works in post-production, and I said, hey, let's do something together. And he said, well, let's work on a brand film. And I said, yeah, let's do it. Who are we going to do a brand film for? And we both knew Ursula Gilliam, who runs a company called Gear Perspective, which is canyoneering gear. She does rope bags, backpacks, ass protectors, stuff like that, you know. And she's a really, really huge personality, big character. So I thought, if I'm going to help anybody out with this, she's one because her product is excellent, and she's such a big personality that she's going to come through on camera and just be amazing. So we reached out to her to see if she'd be into it, and immediately she's like, yes, let's do it. I'm so pumped. So we shot it last year, end of last year. I think it was the end of November, December, something like that. And it's still in post-production right now, but it's a brand film, and it's something I'm really proud of. In its current iteration, I'm very proud of it. I think when it comes out, it's going to be a gateway for us to do similar products, whether it's within the canyoneering industry or I hope to aim bigger, you know, like Patagonia needs a film, REI might need a film, Arc'teryx needs a film. You know, that's where my goals are kind of currently set, but I'm happy where I am right now. I'm really happy just working on local brands, helping people out and doing what I can to just make beautiful work, but have more of a purpose. Rather than just going out and filming a trip I'm on, I'm writing a script that has a purpose behind it.
You're still working, full time with ABC, right?
Yes.
And you have a son.
Yes.
So this sounds like a pretty time consuming job there as well.
Yeah.
So what's that looking like? How are you balancing these things?
It was relatively manageable until this past year. Previous to this past year, my 4-year-old son was not walking around like a crazy man and speaking full sentences to me every 5 seconds. So it was pretty easy because he'd go to bed early, and when he was awake, he's chilling. You know, he's playing with his toys, he's eating food. The first couple years of his life, he's in a crib or whatever. You know, like it was pretty easy to be watching him, let him do his thing, and I could work on my computer. Nowadays, you got him on your shoulder every 5 minutes going, Daddy, what you working on? What are you doing in here? Can you come help me with this? I want to show you this. You know, what planet is this? He's obsessed with the universe. What planet is this? What's the biggest planet in the whole universe, Dada? You know, like things like that. So yeah, it is a lot difficult. These past 6 months have been incredibly, incredibly hard. You just find a way to do it. I mean, that's the whole thing. If you're not passionate about it, you're never gonna do it. That's all there is to it. So you got to find out what your passion is and go for it and find ways to make it happen. And with this filmmaking thing, for me, I'm crazy passionate about it. I love it. I just make it work.
I think something too with a lot of people, they think they don't have time for things, and what I had to train myself to do was stop saying I don't have time and start saying I have to make time.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
you got to prioritize your time.
Right, and I think a lot of people also don't stop and realize like, oh yeah, and then I watch TV for 2 hours every night, or I scrolled on my phone for an hour. And if you knock those out, and you got 3 hours that day, right?
That's
there
totally
that
true.
you could use for something else.
Notoriously, I'm a person who likes to pick up far too many hobbies. When you look at the things I do, I like to garden. Every year I'm gardening, and that is a huge time suck. It's something I'm passionate about. I think it's very fun. I love nurturing these plants and eating their fruit. It's fun. But that is a time suck. And if I chop that out of my life, I could probably make more films. But it's prioritizing your time and how you spend it. And, now I have my son, and now he's walking around and wants to go on walks around the neighborhood. Soon it'll be backpacking trips and baseball games and whatever else he'll be into. So I'm just trying to get as much in as I can now while I have the ability. And when he starts taking over that priority, the films will probably go to the side a little bit, but my hope is to have a team of people that I don't have to do everything. I don't have to do the sound design, the color grading, the full edit, everything, It would be great to have a team of people to be able to work with.
So this Gear Perspective branded film, does it have a name? Does it have an expected release? Does it have a runtime? What should we know about it?
Well, it's a short film. It's I'd say 6 minutes long, and it's a brand film to introduce you to Ursula, her passion project, which is Gear Perspective, and it's really to sell you on her, because her brand is her. That's what we realized while making this. A lot of people will talk about the quality and this and that, and yes, her products are quality. They're well thought out, they're well designed, and they're well manufactured. But what's really unique and interesting is her. She's the one that you're buying this product for, because once you meet her, once you see her, once you hear her talk about how passionate she is about this, you can't help but want to buy one of her products. I don't know how business has been going for her. I can't speak to that, but I can tell you that I think that this kind of a product to help sell her is going to elevate her business far more than it currently is.
So this is something that's coming out in the future, but you've got tons of shorts and tons of videos that you've put together. So tell us two things: where people can go to watch them, and then which 3 they should watch first.
Well, if you're going to go watch any of my stuff, there's a few places. I'd say start at exploremorefilms.com. And if you want to send me a message, or if you have an interesting story, send it to me there, because I'm always looking for an interesting documentary to make, interesting characters with, interesting live-life experience. So hit me up. But other places you can find my work, that's really just my films. If you're looking for a broad spectrum, what does this guy do? Go to vimeo.com/Crabby, Crabbey. It'll show you a wide breadth of all my work, including my motion graphics work, my art direction work. I have a couple reels on there so you can get a quick, preface into who I am. I would say those are the 2 best places to go.
All right, so then for those outdoor people, because they've got a lot of movies to pick from.
Oh, yeah.
So which are the ones you think people should watch first? Because what you got to do right now is you got to recommend the ones that are going to make them want to watch all of them.
So if you're going to hit up my site and check out a couple films, here's the priority list that I would give you depending on your interest level. If you're interested in family, love, and passing down the outdoors to the next generation, I would watch one called The Bond, and it's about a father and son going on a hunting trip. Preface to that is that warning is that if you're squeamish or don't like animals being killed, don't watch that one. Next, if you're into Death Valley canyoneering, absolutely go watch Death to Solitude, which is about 2 different canyons that we ran through a couple years ago. Lots of beautiful imagery in there, and it's certainly places that if you haven't been there, most people have not seen these locations. They are very barren. And then as the third option, I would say go check out TGIF the 13th, which is the Jason Voorhees spoof film, specifically if you like horror films. Because what it does is it mixes 2 things that I love, which is beautiful cinematic outdoor film making with scripted parody of a classic horror franchise.
So now we've done our requisite advertising for your work. Is there anything else? Is there anything else you need to share with people before we make our way to that final question and wrap this thing up?
Sure. I'll make it kind of short and sweet. One of the things that really helped to inspire me in this path, specifically the outdoor filmmaking path, somewhere around 2017, 2018, I did a trip back to Ohio, and I was sitting there drinking whiskey with my cousin, and my aunt and uncle were there. They had seen something I had made, something outdoor, or maybe I was just even telling them a story about one of the adventures I was just on. And they go, "You must get that from Ed." And I go, "Who the hell is Ed?" And they go, "Ed Abbey." And I'm like, "Who are you talking about?" And they go on to tell me, "No one's ever told you about Ed Abbey?" And I go, "No." They say, "Well, he's a family member, and he's a fairly famous author."
So you hadn't heard of the Monkey Wrench Gang?
Never. Basically, they gave me a book that I think they gave me Desert Solitaire. They actually said, "Here, take it home with you, read it, check it out." So I took it, read it, and immediately fell in love. I was like, what? I felt like my family was a lie this whole time. I'm like, how could you keep something like this from me? Like, we have this famous author. I don't know how to refer to him. He's my grandfather's cousin, so I don't really know what that means to me, in terms of an actual relation. But
I think that makes him a cousin.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, he was alive during my lifetime. He died in '89, so I was already kicking people. I was like, I could have met him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I had granted, I wasn't into the outdoors as much and blah, blah, blah when I was 8 years old. But the point is that it just was like this missed opportunity that I never even knew existed. And then I find out when I'm like 38, I just thought it was weird. But very excited to learn and start delving into him and learning about his history and everything that he did. He's somebody in my family that I saw myself in. Because when I look at my family, I don't see a lot of creatives, I guess is the word I would use. Now, they're creative in their own right. I don't want to say they're not creative, but they're not creative in the way that I strive to be creative, in the visual arts. And this guy was creative in the literary arts, and very creative at that. Now, he's a controversial figure. If you've heard of him or know about his history, I'm sure you're probably sitting there going, fuck that guy. He was There's things online. I'll let you look it up for yourself. There's things that people don't like about him.
Yeah, there are people that see him as a hero and people that don't. Yeah.
And there's reasons for that, and I see both sides of it. But if you just look at his work for what it is in terms of the love of the outdoors, I think that there's something for anybody who likes the outdoors to pick up those books and learn from. Just the way that he writes about the outdoor world is unique in its own. I can't think of another author that writes the way that he writes. Anyway, he inspired me. It made me go, oh, he's advocating for the outdoors through this literary medium. I'm advocating for it through this visual medium. I don't know. It inspired me to keep pushing, Every time I bought all of his books, I've read, I think, probably every book he's ever, even like the shitty, like back in the day, he did like these, he did one called like Slick Rock, and it was like he would be paired up with like with a photographer. So the photographer would go out and shoot photography of like the southern Utah desert and show off, the Slick Rock and this and that, and he'd write words about that. Even those I find interesting. It's just diving deep into his life and where he came from. He came from the same area. I think it's home Pennsylvania is what it's called, or maybe it's Indiana, Pennsylvania. Either way, it's right there by where I grew up, and then he moved out west and he spent a lot of time in Arizona. He died in Arizona. He's just somebody that I just wish I would have known about earlier in my life, because it could have maybe started this whole thing sooner.
Right. It could have been like maybe there was some sort of connection there that, I mean, of course, there's a possibility there would be nothing there
Absolutely.
to see, but there's
100%.
a possibility that there's some little connection, or he'd see something in you, and then he could help foster this, and you could learn from him, and then you could carry on his legacy or something in some capacity. Yeah.
Well, honestly, I still hope to do that in the future. If I had an ultimate goal to round out this entire conversation, is to make a documentary on him. There isn't one to this date that's worth a shit, in my opinion. I think it's a disservice. I think he needs one. The question is, who's going to make it? And I can't think of anybody better than a family member. Mm-hmm. I think that'd be a great person to do it. So I do have plans. I've been holding out because I wanted to make sure that my filmmaking skills are up to snuff before I even attempt to reach out to his children, his
estate.
Yes, right. Exactly. Because he has tons of daughters and grandchildren and stuff. So, but yeah, that's in the works for the future. That's my plan. I'm starting the research, and I'm gonna hopefully pull off a documentary about Ed Abbey in the future, and we'll see. Right. Check him out. Read his books.
Yes. Which one of those should they read? Monkey Wrench Gang or something else?
No, if you've never read Ed Abbey in your entire life, start with Desert Solitaire. 100%. That's the book you start with, because that book it's nonfiction. It's journal entries from his time he spent in Arches National Park as a ranger. This is like at the very bare bones beginning of Arches and his experiences there, and how he rails against government coming in and putting in paved roads and restrooms and ruining the natural landscape. Yeah, that's the absolute start. But then if you're a seasoned Abbey connoisseur, if you will, The Fool's Progress is probably my favorite book. He always called that like his magnum opus or something. Like that was his grand novel that he was writing. Some people think it fell flat. I think it's amazing.
All right, so you know where that brings us, right?
Yes, it does.
So this brings us to the famous final question. So based on everything we've talked about in this show, what's the final thought you want to leave everyone with?
All right. So I've prepared a quote. This is one of my favorite quotes from Ed Abbey. I know how ironic this is, considering what I said about John Muir quotes earlier in the the show. But
I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah.
I don't have to point it out for you.
Yeah. So this is in relation to getting out into nature and enjoying it. You can't see anything from a car. You've got to get out of the contraption and walk. Better yet, crawl. On hands and knees over sandstone and through the thorn bush and cactus. When traces of blood begin to mark your trail, you'll see something. Maybe. And that's it.
And so with that takes us to the end of the show, and I managed to stay somewhat alert. I only had to take one pee break.
Good job.
I'm mostly getting this cold out of my system. I still kind of sound like a human. Mm-hmm. So thanks for bearing with me through all this. Thanks for sitting down, sharing all your stories. It's going to be Erica's favorite episode because you talked so much about Disney World.
Oh, boy. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
man.
thanks a bunch for being on the show, man.
Travel is great, but planning for travel can be time-consuming and difficult. That's where One Travel comes in. With One Travel, you'll find everything you need to book the perfect trip. Flights, hotels, cars, transportation, it's all right there. With One Travel, you can book online, via app, or even pick up the phone and talk to a travel advisor ready to help you make your selections. Visit onetravel.com/music or call 855-437-2154. Plan it, book it, live it. One Travel.
Ready to wake up in a new destination nearly every day with Norwegian Cruise Line? Book today to get 70% off second guest to Alaska, Europe, and beyond. Plus, everyone can enjoy their vacation with free unlimited open bar, free specialty dining, and more. Visit ncl.com, call your travel advisor, or 1-888-NCL-CRUISE. Offer ends soon. Norwegian Cruise Line. Ships registry the Bahamas and USA. Restrictions apply.
The rest of my life gon' start today.
It's the big sale at Half Price Books. Get almost everything for an extra 20% off this Labor Day weekend. Whether you're on the hunt for collectibles, comics, music, or movies, you're sure to find a little something new or used at your local Half Price Books. Save big with 20% off. Saturday, August 31st through Monday, September 2nd, in-store at your local Half Price Books and shop millions of titles on sale at hpb.com. Offer cannot be combined with other coupons. Exclusions apply.
And now it's that part of the show where I invite you all to go to our website, gogetoutside.com. Look for this, episode 126 with Christopher R. Abbey, and there you will find photographs of him in action and links, tons of links. Everything we talked about in today's show, links to Ed Abbey, links to his books, links to documentaries about him, video links of Christopher's work, and a bunch of other links that I have already forgotten about. Do yourself a favor, go to the website or take a look down in the show notes and find all of those links there. It is a smorgasbord. And as we rapidly approach the end of this season, if you would like to get in touch with me here at the show, you can do that a number of ways. You can email me, jason@gogetoutside.com, or you can leave a voicemail or a text message at +1 818 925 0106. And if you would, please go to your podcast purveyor of choice. Make sure you are subscribed, rate and review the show, and most importantly, share it with someone who you think would like it. And a reminder, if you would like to share this show in an interesting way, go to our website and go to the Help Out page. There you will find excerpts, photographs, a variety of ways you can help share the show. Next time on the show, come back September 16th for the return of Pamela Zulalian. You may remember her from episode 13, but she's also popped up in the John Muir Trail episode and in the solo backpacking episode. Well, she is back now, 9 years since her original episode, to tell us all about the ways her life has changed over the years. Come back for in-depth discussion about cabin life in the Angeles National Forest, first-hand impacts of wildfires, what life as a llama mama is like, and the realities of dealing with a mountain lion attack on your pack animals. So come back September 16th. Pamela Zulalian. See you then.
While no one knows what tomorrow may bring, Bridgestone is working toward a more positive outlook. With innovations like developing a tire using 75% recycled and renewable materials. It's just one of the many ways Bridgestone is making a difference today, for generations to come. Because that's what really matters. Bridgestone, solutions for your journey. Visit whatreallymatters.com to learn more.
Travel is great, but planning for travel can be time-consuming and difficult. That's where One Travel comes in. With One Travel, you'll find everything you need to book the perfect trip. Flights, hotels, cars, transportation, it's all right there. With One Travel, you can book online, via app, or even pick up the phone and talk to a travel advisor ready to help you make your selections. Visit onetravel.com/music or call 855-437-2154. Plan it, book it, live it. One Travel.
It's the big sale at Half Price Books. Get almost everything for an extra 20% off this Labor Day weekend. Whether you're on the hunt for collectibles, comics, music, or movies, you're sure to find a little something new or used at your local Half Price Books. Save big with 20% off. Saturday, August 31st through Monday, September 2nd, in-store at your local Half Price Books and shop millions of titles on sale at hpb.com. Offer cannot be combined with other coupons. Exclusions apply.
If you have kids or pets, you know stains and odors in your carpet and upholstery are inevitable. But the experts at ChemDry can help. ChemDry removes odors and stubborn stains by sending millions of carbonating bubbles deep within your carpet. ChemDry lifts dirt, urine, and stains to the surface to then be extracted away, giving you a cleaner and healthier home. Call 1-800-ChemDry or visit chemdry.com to connect with your local ChemDry and learn about special offers in your area. That's 1-800-ChemDry or visit chemdry.com today.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.